Greetings and welcome to Sports 101, the show that discusses sport beyond the X's and O's. We like to expand our conversation of sports to include the history, past, present, as well as in the making. We also look at the game from a people, places, and cultural perspective. I'm your host, Jamar Harp. Be sure to follow me on social media at Coach_Harp412. That's Twitter, and Facebook under Jamar Harp. Please also make sure you get social with Sports 101 and the litany of SportsZone Chicago's other shows by following us on Twitter at SportsZone CHI, Facebook at SportsZone Chicago, and Instagram at SportsZone Chicago. Remember, SportsZone Chicago is a sports talk app. You can watch my show as well as any of the others. What's Up, Cuz, Sean and Maya in the Morning, Holitek Hall, anything you like. You can keep up with breaking sports news. If you miss something, don't worry about it. You can go to our YouTube channel, search SportsZone Chicago. But more importantly, we want you to download the app. The SportsZone Chicago app can be found in the iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon stores. This week, we would like to bring to you West Africa and mixed martial arts. If you look at our title picture right here, you'll see mixed martial arts champions in UFC all hailing from one region in West Africa. And all these are current champions right now. So according to research from a few years ago, mixed martial arts is the third most popular sport in the world, only trailing behind soccer and basketball. So remember, we're talking about the world, not the United States. So mixed martial arts is the third largest sport in the world behind soccer and basketball. It's also the world's fastest growing sport, a fact that suggests that one day mixed martial arts, in particular the UFC, can be the top sport on earth, and most likely by the end of this decade. One of the reasons for this popularity is it's always been around, and particularly in West Africa. Remember, basketball was invented in 1891, baseball in 1869, i.e. the modern versions, and football played its first game as well as 1869. So mixed martial arts was going on thousands of years before these modern day sports were invented in West Africa. Most mixed martial artists, they strive to join the UFC, which is the top mixed martial arts company in the world. And that includes African-born fighters. They've been grappling their way to the top of the Ultimate Fighting Championship for some time. And out of the UFC 600 professional fighters, 11 were born on the African continent. Now, yes, there are others of African descent, including Anderson Silva, anyone from Brazil, John Jones, and the African-American fighters. But in this conversation, we're just talking about the individuals that were born on the continent recently. Now, majority of the UFC, a good portion is of African descent, like I just described, with the likes of John Jones, Anderson Silva, and all the other champions from the Caribbean or North America or anywhere of the diaspora. But right now, there were 11 born and raised on the continent of Africa. So before we get into that, I just want to briefly explain the company of UFC and its modest beginnings. So again, UFC is the largest MMA promotion company in the world, and it features the highest level fighters in the sport in its roster. There are competitors such as Bellator and other things, and we'll talk about that a little later. The UFC, they produce events worldwide that showcase 12 weight divisions. There's 8 divisions for men and 4 women's divisions, and they abide by the unified rules of mixed martial arts. Now, this wasn't always the case, as we'll learn a little later, but currently they do abide by the governing body of mixed martial arts. So in the early 1990s, Art Davie, he proposed to John Milius and Roaring Gracie to have an 8-man single elimination tournament called the War of the Worlds. Now, Roaring Gracie is part of the famous Gracie family that are known for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and we'll talk about that a little later. So basically, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is some people from the East were traveling around in the early 1900s and happened to go to Brazil, and they were teaching judo. And one of the elder Gracies in the clan learned it and taught his brothers, and then they added like a capoeira type spin to it, which turned it into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So we'll talk about capoeira as well as Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu a little later. But this tournament was inspired by the Gracie's and Action video series. The Gracie's had the family had a video series where they showcased martial arts, and it featured their type of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And basically what they did is it was like YouTube is now. Their videos, they would invite martial artists from different disciplines to come in, and they would beat them. And some of these martial arts were karate, kung fu, and kickboxing. Again, they were trying to showcase the Gracie style of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Again, when we look into this, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was not from Brazil. Again, as I just described, this capoeira roots, but I'll unpack that a little later. So in 1993, Wild Promotions, they sought a television partner, and they approached the pay-per-view producers, HBO and Showtime, and Campbell McLaurin.
The clinch is extremely
group. So these contracted video and film director Jason Kuzin, they got him design their trademark octagon, which will be a staple in the UFC, and is obviously a signature piece for any UFC event. They decided to name the show the Ultimate Fighting Championship, and what they wanted to do is they initially pitched the event as like a real life video game similar to a Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter tournament, with different martial artists and different disciplines fighting to the top. So Wild Promotions produced the first event, and they called it UFC 1 at McNichols Sports Arena in Denver, Colorado on November 12th, 1993. So again, you're about to see a video of the UFC 1. It pales in comparison to the modern day UFC, not only in rules and regulation, but in the enhancements of the video and the quality of film that they're producing. So let's take a quick look at this first video, which demonstrates
the clinch is extremely important in jiu-jitsu, and watch his hoist front leg as he uses, I think, a low side kick here to get his opponent to lower his guard, and then he's going to clinch. You're going to see an excellent there, just like that. A couple of those, Bill, I tell you what, that's...
it's much like a Muay Thai kick, but it's like a self-defense move that a self-defense person will use against a street attack.
Very, very much so. He can keep his opponent at bay, and he can also get his opponent to be real wary of that kick. You get hit once or twice in the knee there. That really hurts.
Art's thinking about it already. You can see he's in and out.
Yes. Watch this. Hoist now commands his opponent. He's getting him to move back a little bit and on command, and you're going to see a clinch here, I suspect, anytime real soon. That's what Hoist's strategy is right now. As the Brazilians always say, if you have a good clinch, you have good jiu-jitsu.
I think there's a little bit too much. They're going to have to do something pretty soon, because I think Art is a little bit worried here.
There it is. There he is. And he's on the ground. Now we're watching Hoist take the mount position. And that's exactly where the jiu-jitsu man wants to be. He's on top. This is not a good place
So headbutts the face.
for Art.
To work a little bit of headbutt.
Look at those legs. Now look at those legs right there. Hoist's legs.
Yes.
He's after weapon. That opponent
Good anchor.
can't get his legs off the ground. As soon as Art tries to lift his legs, Hoist will strip or push on his legs. Hoist will stick his leg back, disrupting the opponent's balance. And Hoist he's got an excellent base, one of the fundamental positions in Gracie Jiu-Jitsu right now.
Now also this is making one of them very, very tired, which is Art Jemison on the bottom, because he's got to try to push him off.
I tell you what, it is no fun being on the bottom with a Jiu-Jitsu man.
But I think Art's doing pretty good, because he's trying to keep him as close to him as he can.
Well, I tell you, that glove is really working in Art's against Art, because he can't grab.
He can't grab, he can't pull him in tight.
You bet. If I were him, perhaps he might think about taking that thing off right now.
Take a break and take it off. He just bowed out. He just tapped out.
Did he? The towel just got thrown in as well.
Put these guys out there trying to breathe under there.
That's a replay here.
Here's the replay. Now watch what happens. Now he's working with him. He's trying to push him away. I think more or less he just gave up.
He already tapped.
Because he can't.
All right, so again, in this video, this is UFC 1, and it basically was supposed to be a Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter tournament where different disciplines will come in and fight, and the goal was to showcase, can Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu beat all of these different styles. Again, if you watched one of the Gracie's fight, I think that was Royce Gracie. He showed elements of judo with wrestling and throws. He showed capoeira with the kicking, and also some of the submission moves, which is a staple of great Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. Once they get on top of you, locking their feet so you can't use your legs and getting into some form of submission hold where they restricting wind and forcing you to tap out. So the show ultimately proposed the answer to sports fans' question, can a wrestler beat a boxer? Remember, at this time, boxing is more prevalent than mixed martial arts. You saw most of your mixed martial arts over in the Far East, even in movies. If you remember the movie with Jean-Claude Van Damme, and he went fought Tong Po out in the East or whatever, where kickboxing was prevalent, but it wasn't very big in the United States at the time. As with most martial arts, fighters typically had skills in one discipline, had little experience against opponents in a different discipline. So if I was a boxer, I'm used to throwing my hands, but if somebody's trying to kick, that's way out my element. So me getting into this, I don't have a good chance of success. This is very true, except in the West African martial arts, again, where they were always mixed, which gave fighters from this region a cultural advantage. This is a new subject to the global community. However, martial arts started not only in East Africa with the Kun people, hence Kung Fu, but the West African mixed martial arts spread to Portugal, where we developed Angola and other fighting systems. So this first television broadcast, it features kickboxers Patrick Smith and Kevin Rozier, a savant fighter, Gerard Gordeau, a karate expert, Jane Frazier, Ken Shamrock was a shoot fighter, a sumo wrestler, Telly Tula, and Art Jemison, a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, and younger brother of the UFC co-founder, Royce Gracie's younger brother. So this was all the different styles in the first UFC one. So if you remember looking at the film, Royce Gracie's submission skills proved the most effective in this tournament, earning him the championship after submitting Jemison, Shamrock, and Gordeau back to back to back. The show actually proved successful. They didn't know fans were going to watch it. They had 86,000, almost 87,000 subscribers on the first pay-per-view event, and the show was only supposed to be a one-off event. Current president Dana White said, but with the popularity, they decided to do more. Now we're at UFC, 175 or something, actually 162. Was being a little facetious. Dana White was quoted as saying, it did so well on pay-per-view, they decided to do another and another and another. Never in a million years did these guys think they were creating a sport. That's very true, because I remember in 2005, I was in grad school at Grambling State University under the direction of our professor, Dr. Chevelle Hall, and my group actually did a case study on mixed martial arts and will UFC be successful, and we were proven correct. So that goes to show you whatever you're talking about in the college classroom can materialize in real life. So don't just throw those ideas to the side. Let's put them to use, people. So again, this first pay-per-view wasn't like it was now. There was no weight classes, and the fighters either faced larger or smaller opponents. So you had Keith the Giant Killer Hackney. He faced Emmanuel Yarborough at UFC 3, and it was a 9-inch height difference and a 400-pound weight disadvantage. So, again, there wasn't no classes. And then why did they have this? Because a lot of martial artists, they believe so strongly in their disciplines. They say technique can overcome size disadvantages, and a skilled fighter can use his opponent's size and strength against him. This proved to be incorrect, as larger fighters will have the advantage on smaller fighters, especially when UFC adopted, a governing body of rules and had certain time periods and rounds, especially if you're being judged off of not only accuracy, but power and what the punch does to you. Even if I am a smaller fighter, I'm landing punches on a larger fighter, not going to score that many points because I'm not really doing damage per the judges in their scoring system. The 170-pound Royce Gracie winning 3 of his first 4 events. The UFC proved that size did not always matter. But again, this was an anomaly because UFC was an infant in its beginnings, and people weren't used to the submission style or Brazilian jiu-jitsu that the Gracie family brought to the world, again, which is a combination of judo and Angolan capoeira. The first event was dominated by jiu-jitsu, but other fighting styles soon became successful. First, you had wrestling, which is, your classic, Greco-Roman or freestyle wrestling styles. Then ground and pound, which is basically trying to take someone to the ground and just pound them to submission. Kickboxing, again, which was very popular in Thailand. Traditional boxing. And then you had dirty boxing at this time, which is punching people in the back of the head and below the belt. And all this eventually melded into the modern day mixed martial arts. But again, mixed martial arts was prevalent since the beginning in China and West Africa, which we'll prove before the end of this episode. So in April of 1995, following UFC 5 in Charlotte, North Carolina, Davey and Gracie sold their interest in the franchise to SEG, and they disbanded their company, Wild Promotions. So Davey continued with SEG as the show's booker and matchmaker, and he became the commissioner of Ultimate Fighting until December of 1997. UFC used the tagline, "There are no rules," but they did operate under a limited rules system. So the limited rules included biting was banned, as well as eye gouging, but they allowed hair pulling, head butting, groin strikes, either with the hand or foot, and fish hooking. So fish hooking is taking your fingers and putting them in someone's mouth and opening their mouth, then to cause damage. Oftentimes they will follow up with an elbow to the face, again, trying to get your opponent off guard into a submission move or just beat them to submission. So in 1996, UFC, again, is very in its infancy. Senator John McCain saw a tape of some of the beginning UFC fights, and he called it horrible. McCain, he led a campaign to ban UFC, basically calling it human cockfighting, basically chickens fighting each other. And he sent letters to the governors of all 50 states asking them to ban the event, not sanctioning any UFC fights in their states. 36 states obeyed it and banned no holds barred fighting. And one of those states included New York at the time, which enacted the ban on the eve of UFC 12, which forced UFC to relocate the event to Dothan, Alabama. The UFC, even with these bans, continued to air on DirecTV pay-per-view. Again, what they were arguing was it is violent. However, it comes on pay-per-view late at night. And though its audience remained very small compared to the larger cable pay-per-view audience at that time, it was growing. UFC responded to its criticism and increased the cooperation with state athletic commissions, and they changed its rules to remove the less palatable elements while retaining the core elements of grappling and striking. So basically, they took out some things to make it more similar to other sports and increased its governing body. So they introduced weight classes and they banned fish hooking. UFC 14 was the first event where gloves became mandatory. Kicks to the head of a downed opponent were banned. So you could kick a person in the head, but if they fell on the ground, you could not kick them in the head, but you could jump and knee them in the head or punch them in the head. So those were the rules. So 5-minute rounds were introduced at UFC 21, and the UFC began to gradually rebrand itself as a sport rather as like a bloodbath spectacle, as it was being called in popular culture. Blake Nick McCarthy and another matchmaker, Joel Silver, created a manual of policies and procedures, codes of conduct, and rules to help get UFC sanctioned in more and more states and by different states' athletic commissions. And these rules still exist today. Moving into the early 2000s, the UFC gained in popularity and the gates increased. They began to fight at the casinos like the Trump Taj Mahal, the MGM Grand, and they secured their first television deal with Fox Sports. The best damn sports show, period. It's a sports show that used to come on. It aired the first mixed martial arts match on American cable TV in June of 2002, as well as the main event showcasing Chuck Liddell versus Victor Belfort, and that was UFC 37. UFC 40 proved to be the most critical event. That was like a 13,000 sellout, at the MGM Grand Arena and sold 150,000 pay-per-view buys in one day. That card was a super studded card, and it had a championship grudge match between the current champion, Tito Ortiz, and a former super lightweight champion, Ken Shamrock. So that was in the Tito Ortiz, Ken Shamrock duels, if you're a fan of UFC. Shamrock had previously left UFC for the WWE, but then returned back to MMA as UFC salaries increased, and he wanted to get back to his true passion. UFC 40 also garnered mainstream attention from massive media outlets like ESPN and USA Today, and that was unheard of with mixed martial arts because, again, 5 years earlier, it was talked about being banned. Again, even though their revenues were coming up, they had massive bills as a startup industry, and they were serious thoughts about them folding, and they stepped out of bounds of pay-per-view, which was their only moneymaker at the time, and they jumped into television. So they started a television show called The Ultimate Fighter, and it was a reality television show that featured up-and-coming MMA fighters, and the catch was whoever won would get a $1 million contract with UFC. So in January of 2005, Spike Television launched The Ultimate Fighter 1 directly after WWE Raw. So you were able to capture that wrestling audience, again, that was still a part of UFC with Ken Shamrock, and then just dual interest. So right after WWE Raw, The Ultimate Fighter came on, and the show became an instant success, and it called them the first season final was great. And that was between light heavyweight finalists Forrest Griffin and Stephen Bonner, and they went head-to-head for this contract. And following that, Spike picked up UFC Unleashed, which is like a recap of select fights from previous events that were on pay-per-view or other streaming networks that the regular public didn't get to see. With the UFC announcing this partnership with Fox, the Ultimate Fighter show entered in its 14th season. Recently, they then moved to FX Network on Friday nights, and that started in 2012. So in December of 2006, Zuffa acquired the Northern California promotion World Extreme Cage Fighting in order to stop the IFL from making a deal with Versus. NBC wanted to get into the mixed martial arts game too. So similar like networks bid for the NBA or the NFL or college football, the NBC wanted to get into mixed martial arts too. So they just bought that company, so NBC couldn't do that. At this time, UFC had a deal with Spike. So that purchase allowed them to block them without violating any contracts. The other version or the other league, they feature lighter weight fighters, where the UFC featured heavier fighters. So notable WEC fighters were Uriah Faber, who did switch, and a lot of these guys did switch to UFC. Jamie Varner, Carlos Condit, Benson Henderson, and Donald Cowboy Cerrone. On March 27th, 2007, the UFC and the Japan-based rival Pride Fighting Championships announced their agreement where the majority owners of the UFC, the Fertitta brothers, will purchase the Pride van. So in 2016, ESPN reported that UFC's parent company, Zuffa, was in talks to sell the company for $3.5 to $4 billion. So at this time, the UFC was sold to a group by WME IMG, which was former Silver Lake Partner Group of Kohlberg, Kravis Roberts, and MDS Capital for $4 billion. This was the largest ever acquisition of sports of a whole entire business at its time. Now, fast forwarding to October of 2016, MMA Junkie, which is an insider reporter, obtained a financial report released by Endeavor, and it detailed that the promotion had reached a year-to-year high of $609 million in revenue during 2015 alone. So this is remarkable. If you look at the growth in such a short time, 76% of this total was content revenue that covered media rights from television, pay-per-view rights, and the UFC Fight Pass subscriptions was turning 40% of its content revenue. And that was followed by U.S. and international media rights to broadcast the UFC. So the UFC Performance Institute was also established at this time, and it was the official mixed martial arts school for UFC. So if you look at this picture right here, you'll see a picture of the UFC Institute. The UFC Institute is located in Las Vegas, and it's opposite the UFC Apex. And the Institute, again, was opened in 2017, and it's the world's first mixed martial arts center for innovation, research, and training. So within here, you can Google this center. It's amazing. They have different types of rings to train in, different environments. You can take oxygen away, do different things just to test a fighter. And not only MMA athletes go there, so about 400 MMA athletes train there too, but also NFL, NBA, NHL, and Major League Baseball athletes go there as well. A lot of people are seeing the benefits of mixed martial arts training, which is a full body workout in their off seasons to prepare for their main sport. So a lot of athletes just go there and pay them instead of going to different trainers because it's a multi-million-dollar facility. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll discuss more in the mixed martial arts and get into its West African origins. Again, I'm Jamar Harp, and this is Sports 101. We'll see you in a quick second.
Right now, the COVID-19 vaccines are available to millions of Americans, and soon they will be available to everyone.
This vaccine means hope. It will protect you and those you love from this dangerous and deadly disease.
I want to go back to work, and I want to be able to move around.
To visit with Michelle's mom, to hug her and see her on her birthday.
You know what I'm really looking forward to is going to opening day in Texas Ranger Stadium with a full stadium.
We've lost enough people, and we've suffered enough damage.
In order to get rid of this pandemic, it's important for our fellow citizens to get vaccinated.
I'm getting vaccinated because we want this pandemic to end as soon as possible.
So we urge you to get vaccinated when it's available to you.
So roll up your sleeve and do your part.
This is our shot.
Now it's up to you.
Welcome back. I'm Jamar Harp, and this is Sports 101, the show that discusses sport beyond the X's and O's. We talk about the game from a people, places, and cultural perspective. We also look at the game through the lens of history, past, present, and in the making. Again, please get social with Sports 101 and the litany of shows on SportsZone Chicago. You can follow us on Twitter at SportsZone CHI, Facebook at SportsZone Chicago, and Instagram at SportsZone Chicago. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, search SportsZone Chicago, but most importantly, download the SportsZone Chicago app. The SportsZone Chicago app can be found in the iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon stores. Now, briefly before the break, we described the UFC. Now I'd like to get into the meat of our discussion and talk about West African martial arts, in particular the mixed martial arts around the Nigeria and Cameroon region, where all our champions come from today. Of the UFC's almost 600 professional fighters from around the world, 11 were just born on the continent of Africa. Now, we've already talked about the African Americans and the Brazilians and the people throughout the diaspora that are of African descent, but only 11 were born on the continent. This is important because if you look at how many fighters from Europe that you get, and the UFC was started in the United States, so you would think you would see global representation from all aspects of the globe, but you actually see underrepresentation with the largest continent in the world. 3 of the 8, which will make 37%, are champions. They hold the heavy, middleweight, and welterweight championships. So this first picture right here is Francis Ngannou. He's the heavyweight champion. He just recently won that title. Our next picture will be Israel Adonise. He is also the middleweight champion. And then our last picture is Kamaru Usman, who is the welterweight champion. Over the last few years, West Africa, namely again the regions of Nigeria and Cameroon, has stepped up with world-class talent in the mixed martial arts industry. 3 current UFC champions represent this small part of the world, not really known prior for its combat sports athletes, but again, has the world's oldest history in mixed martial arts. Nigeria alone is considered the 7th most populated nation in the world, with around 206 million, and they have 2 champions. Prior to these 3 mixed martial arts kings of West Africa, the region was rather quiet in the world of combat sports, despite its history as being its founder. Usman, who was born in Ushe, in Nigeria, was a Division II national champion in wrestling at Nebraska Kearney. After winning the championship in 2019, he successfully defended his welterweight championship 3 times since then. Israel Adonise serves as the UFC middleweight champion, which he won in October of 2019, and he's the 2nd longest male champion currently. Adonise was born in Lagos, but he moved to New Zealand where he would perfect his craft and hone his skills in mixed martial arts. Adonise, he plays amazing skill and showmanship inside the octagon, and he gets a lot of comparisons to Anderson Silva due to his wiry frame and ability to strike from different angles. Becoming the most recent West African champion is Francis Ngannou, who was born in Cameroon. He's known as one of the UFC's or mixed martial arts hardest hitters. He's the newest champion. He defeated Stipe Miocic with 2nd round knockout recently in March. With impoverished beginnings, he began to work at age 10 in Cameroon in the fields, and he eventually moved to Paris at 22 to begin a career in boxing. If you're familiar with after the Berlin Conference and even before, there was a string of Afro-Franco-linguistic countries in West Africa that France imports people from, and particularly to help its soccer team. Cameroon is one of these countries, and for the quote-unquote better life, he moved there, Paris, to box. He was helping someone, and I believe a homeless shelter or a gym, and they convinced him to try mixed martial arts, and he did so, and his career took off. Again, all 3 are products of West African systems of mixed martial arts, and their variations, which are Lamb wrestling, Dambe boxing, and Capoeira Angola. All these systems were the first examples of mixed martial arts in the world. Now, although none of these use the exact systems, Usman, Adesanya, and Ngannou all culturally come from the regions where these styles originate, and you can see resemblances in each one of their fighting styles. So now let's talk about what are these fighting styles I just referenced. The first one would be Senegalese lamb wrestling. So Senegalese lamb wrestling is a type of folk wrestling traditionally performed by various tribes and what they call sub-Saharan Africa. These tribes will be the Wolof, Dinka, Nuer, Bambara, Jola, and Sere. It's a national sport of Senegal and other parts of the Gambia. Remember, Senegal and Gambia are together And a lot of these countries were separated due to the Berlin Conference. A lot of the same ethnic groups or tribes are in all of these countries, and they were just separated by Europeans. This is a Senegalese form, traditionally allows blows with the hands, which is called frappe, and that's the only one of the West African traditions that let you do so in wrestling. So again, Senegalese wrestling is a mixed martial art where you can box and wrestle. There's a larger confederation and a championship around lutte traditionnelle, and that's been developed since the 1990s. Again, this is a French-speaking country, so a lot of the titles will be in French. Senegalese fighters now practice both forms, and they call them lutte traditionnelle sans frappe, and that's the one where you can wrestle and punch, and lutte traditionnelle avec frappe, where you're not striking. Okay, so this was formally and additionally introduced as a preparatory exercise for war among the warrior class of the Wolof, Bamba, and Sera people in the Senegambia region. And depending on what tribe you're from, you use a different technique. So it's sort of like dancing. Everybody put their unique little twist or flair into it. So in the Wolof cultural group or tradition, wrestling is divided into different techniques, with Mbate being one of them. So in the Wolof means Mbate means a gala or simply wrestling without strikes. And I usually take place at night. Again, it's underneath the stars. It was cultural. Your ancestors could watch, from the heavens, wherever they descended in the ancestral realm. And it was a spiritual event as well as athletic. It also serves as an initiation rite in the manhood among the Wolof and Sera people. Because wrestling, it was about character, and you had to use cunning and skill to beat your opponent. So it was used to teach the young men personal values, where you just can't run out and not have any skill or technique or strategy. You would always lose, and you would take what you learned in wrestling, similar to how people use chess now, and implement that in different aspects of your life. One of the most well-known wrestlers in the Senegambia history is Mustafa Gaye. He's a Wolof from the Fos region in Senegal. Another well-known wrestler is Bukar Faye, and he's the ancestor of the Faye matrilineal Sera dynasty, and both of those kingdoms are still in present-day Senegal. Traditionally, young men also could fight as a distraction to get off their testosterone. They would use it as a tournament if they wanted to court wives, where the winner was supposed to get the prettiest wife. They would use it as a manhood competition and to bring honor to their villages if there was ever any events where the villages would wrestle against each other. Sort of like a smaller Olympic tournament. Each wrestler performed a bok before the start of combat, and this was a spiritual dance to connect itself with his ancestors so he can get energy. Maybe they would teach him some strategy or give him wisdom before he went into battle, per se. The main objective is to throw your opponent to the ground by lifting him up and over, and sometimes outside of a given area, but mainly to make your opponent touch the ground. The Senegalese wrestlers, they train very hard, and they perform press-ups and pull-ups and a lot of different exercises to build up their strength. They're sometimes very large guys. And again, while they believe strength is important, that the element of luck and mental preparation is there too. Sometimes they perform rituals before a match to increase their chances, especially if they're not in the traditional Western religion of Ifa or animalism. You may do a ritual. Sometimes Senegalese wrestlers, they rub a foot on a stone, or they rub certain oils on them to increase good luck. Sometimes you even have pre-match ceremonies where dancers dress as lions, or the word for lion in Senegal is simb, and dancers perform to give good spirits and get them to come to an event. So if you look at a picture right here, this is a simb or a fake lion dancer. Remember in the movie The Lion King, Simba was a name. So just like they took the word Rafiki, which means friend in Swahili, Simba means lion in Senegal. And again, that's where that came from in the movie. So if you look at this video right here, you see a quick dance of a Simba and a pre-ceremony dance before they wrestle. Okay, so if you see in the video, you see the sizes of fighters adorn themselves with oil or different ornaments to give good luck before the match. You saw the area that was that they couldn't go out of, and the mixed martial arts style where it was boxing as well as wrestling. So if you look at these two pictures right here, you'll see wrestlers adorn themselves in costumes and ceremonial garb, similar to WWE. As you can see, they were in a large arena, and a lot of people come to watch this. In the beginning of the video, you saw a play bout with a foreigner in a village, but in real life, you see how hard they were striking or punching each other in the face and trying to throw each other to the ground. This next video is a dancing ceremony that the wrestlers do. So if you could play this video, Greg, it'd greatly be appreciated. so you can see in the video. Thank you so much, Greg. The wrestlers try to showcase their dancing skills for any spectators or women that may be watching. Basically peacocking before the game per se, and hopefully their dancing will match their wrestling prowess, which would provide for adoration at that event locally and being a national figure. Again, this is wrestling. I don't want to compare it to WWE, but it's very similar in the way they market it with the different characters and how they present it in the country. The next sport I would like to talk about is Dambe. Dambe is a martial art from the Hausa people of northern Nigeria. The Hausa people are predominantly Muslim in that region of Nigeria, and it competes in a typical match style with the aim to subdue each other in total submission, with mostly within 3 rounds. But if you can beat someone or make them quit in 1 round, that's ideal. Oftentimes, the Dambe matches result in bodily injuries, such as broken jaws and ribs. This was also traditionally practiced as a way for men to get ready for war, and many of the techniques and terminology allude to warfare, because, again, this is historical. Today, companies of boxers travel performing outdoor matches accompanied by ceremonial drummers and dancers throughout traditional Hausa homelands of northern Nigeria, southern Niger, and southwestern Chad. Remember, we talked about the Berlin Conference and Europeans breaking up all these countries. So you got one group, the Hausa, are in 4 different countries. The word Dambe derives from the Hausa word meaning box. So basically, it's just boxing, but it's a different style. There's no formal weight classes, but they usually match competitors in size, so it's evenly matched. Again, the matches are 3 rounds, and there's no time limit to these rounds. It's basically when they decided to stop it, you can either quit for a round or just quit for the whole match. This is how a Dambe match ends. When there's no activity, one of the participants or officials calls it a halt or end of a round, or someone's hand, knee, or body touches the ground. They refer to knocking your opponent out as killing your opponent, because, again, this is ceremonial based off of traditional war rules and regulations. The primary weapon they use is called a strong side fist, which they also call a spear. So basically, you're going to wrap whatever hand you deem as your strong side hand and pieces of cloth and knitted cording, and you're going to use that to strike. So if you look at this picture right here, you'll see a strong side hand or a spear being wrapped up to fight in Dambe boxing. Okay, so some boxers, they will also dip their spears or hand in sticky resin and mix it with broken glass. This was illegal, though, so they stopped doing that. They also call your second hand as your shield, because remember, everything's based off of a war. So your lead hand, you would keep your spear in, and your off hand, you would keep your shield. And that's held with your open palm facing towards the opponent that uses the block. And you can also grab or hold if that is necessary. You can also wrap your lead leg in a chain. And the chain is used for both defense and offense. So if someone tried to kick your lead leg, they'd be kicking a chain. Or if you kick someone else, you'll be kicking them with chain wrapped legs. Your unwrapped back leg can also be used to kick, but because wrestling is allowed, the goal is to cause the opponent to fall down, which is referred to as killing your opponent, and the winner is the person that knocks down the opponent. Kicks are more common than they used to be traditionally. This was traditionally just boxing and wrestling, and the contests were between men of butchers' guilds who would challenge men from other butchers' guilds from different villages. This was the reason it was from butchers' guilds, because in the Hausa societal structure, only the lower class did this, and they were the ones who ritually slaughtered the animals for them to meet. So they were around all this cordage and rope, and all these traveling butchers filled boxing teams, which they call armies. Again, a war reference, and they would go along, fighting. These bouts often happen at festivals, either on a weekend or a festival marking the end of the harvest season, as the clans of butchers would travel, slaughter the animals. They would have a feast. At the end of the feast, the butchers would come out and fight each other from different guilds. At the harvest, it also was a time where the communities were ripe with money from selling all their goods. So a lot of gambling was done on these Dambe fights, and gambling was closely associated with Dambe fightings, in particular at the festivals. Today, the participants are often urban youth who train in gyms or backyards and compete year round. They're no longer considered lower class or butchers guilds, but they still have a frat-like aspect, as the youth who join is like a community. So that community or team or travel and just have Dembe bouts against other teams. Now these bouts are, very people and consumer friendly. So a sound system will pull up, or a DJ with big speakers, lights. They'll have pre-match rituals such as dance contests. There'll be side betting for the spectators, and obviously be purses for the competitors to keep that fighting spirit alive, so you could pay the fighters so too much corruption couldn't get in. In these traditional bouts, sometimes they would wear amulets as a form of supernatural protection. But again, in certain West African countries that don't practice typical European traditions, they stopped doing this because they felt a fighter would have an unfair advantage by being able to tap into nature or his ancestors, and the other person couldn't. So they stopped letting you do magic or wear amulets to the fights. It's still common, but they'll just place the amulet and feathers and wrap it in their hand and wrap it up, or rub something on their skin, basically protect them from danger. These modern traveling boxing companies engage also in ritual smoking of marijuana and hemp before bouts. Again, it's supposed to be spiritual, so they can commune with their ancestors. And their stance is a single wrap fist of, in particularly the House of Boxers, bear striking resemblance to illustrations of ancient Egyptian boxers. So here's a video right here, and you can see these Dambe boxers in action. Okay, so we're having some technical difficulties with our videos. Basically, the video will be some Dambe boxing. You will see single hands wrapped up. Now let's move to our next martial art, which is capoeira. Now, capoeira, obviously people will be more familiar with that due to Street Fighter and the 90s movie Only the Strong. But capoeira is an African martial art that combines elements of dance, acrobatics, and music. Capoeira was developed by enslaved Africans in Brazil at the beginning of the 16th century. Capoeira is known for its acrobatic and complex maneuvers, which oftentimes involve handstands on the ground and inverted kicks, meaning my hands are in the ground, but I'm kicking in the air. Capoeira also emphasizes flowing movements rather than fixed stances. So what capoeira suggested, which was developed in Angola, I want to fight someone, why should I stand still in front of them? I'm going to flow and move so they can't get a beat on me and hit me. In a stance that they get in called the Jenga, which is a back and forth rocking step, is usually the focal point of this technique, and most moves are developed from the Jenga. The dance and music incorporated in the system was done so as a disguise by these enslaved Africans from Angola, so that their colonial torturers did not know they were practicing fighting techniques. So they basically took their fighting to dance and made it look like a dance where they would stop and fake like they were hitting you, etc. But they were really practicing fighting. After the abolition of slavery in Brazil, capoeira was declared illegal at the end of the 19th century. People used to hire capoeira maestros as bodyguards. They would strap razors to their ankles and wrists, etc. And they were just causing a lot of damage in a society that had captured them and brought them over, but yet now was disenfranchising them due to their skin and not giving them jobs, so they would seclude themselves and fight back. However, by the 1920s, authorities began to relax enforcement and prohibitions on capoeira, and martial artists began to incorporate capoeira techniques into their practices openly. By the 1970s, capoeira masters started traveling around the world, helping the art become international, recognized, and practiced. On November 26, 2014, capoeira was granted a special protected status as an intangible cultural heritage of Brazil by the UNESCO. Now, again, capoeira comes from Angola, which is in West Africa. During the 16th century, the Portuguese, which was the parent country of Brazil, just like the United States relationship with England, the Portuguese bought, sold, traded, and transported prisoners of war they got in Africa for goods and services, or excuse me, goods that they sold to other countries. Brazil, with its large territory, received almost 40% of all Africans captured against their will via the Atlantic slave trade. This was due to the papal bull of demarcation issued by the Catholic Church, which gave Portugal permission to colonize the Eastern Hemisphere and Spain the Western Hemisphere. Majority of enslaved Africans from Angola came to Brazil. They brought with them the distinct soccer style, which is called the Yogo Bonito, as well as capoeira, the martial arts style. Originally, the ancestors traditionally originated from the Kingdom of Congo, and it was called Ngolo. But this kingdom is now present-day Angola. And it was a type of a ritual dance that used several elements of kicking, headbutting, slap boxing, and walking on one's hands, deception, and evasion. Here's two pictures of capoeira right here that demonstrate this style of again, there's technical difficulties or apologies. The purchase was also religious to participate in capoeira, as it both provided a link to the afterlife, which was the opposite of the living world, and enabled a person to channel their ancestors into their dance to help them fight. Although the prisoners of war outnumbered the colonists, rebellions were very rare because of lack of weapons, harsh colonial law, disagreement between prisoners of war coming from the different cultures, and a lack of knowledge about the land. Capoeira was used as a tool to escape bondage, and these completely unequipped people could survive out in the bush in this hostile environment, similar to the Maroons in Jamaica, by fighting off the ruling class with their capoeira, as well as finding guns and linking up with other captured Africans. Martial arts, again, was hidden in dance, so the colonial officials did not know they were practicing fighting. Capoeira maestros would tie these knives to their ankles and arms, again, to cut their opponents to inflict more damage. As more people started to do this, several groups would liberate themselves and begin practicing in settlements throughout the country of Brazil, and quilombos. And these quilombos or maroon settlements offered freedom. The fighters then entered, once they got into the spiritual aspect of capoeira, went into rotas or sacred circles. So do we have that video, Greg? All right. So moving on, to spur this initiative in West Africa, there's a group called the Lionheart Initiative. So I want everyone to look them up. The Lionheart Initiative aims to spread MMA throughout West Africa to a new generation. And one of their goals, and Francis Ngannou said this as well too, is to have an all-Africa UFC card on the continent. So in closing, knowing martial arts are from your culture can give you profound effects, not only in acknowledging that you created something, but tying back into something that relates to you and that hopefully that you can do well, that like these three West African champions are. More individuals of African descent, if they would learn the spiritual and social benefits of martial arts, and may help in regards to other things that we face in this land that we're living in at this time. Also, remember, if you don't use it, you lose it. So spread word and teach future generations about the origins of West African martial arts. Thank you for tuning in to Sports 101. I'm your host, Jamar Harp. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at Coach_Harp412. And make sure you get social with Sports 101 and a litany of other shows on SportsZone Chicago. But following SportsZone Chicago on Twitter at SportsZone CHI, Facebook at SportsZone Chicago, and Instagram at SportsZone Chicago. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, search SportsZone Chicago, but most importantly, download the SportsZone Chicago app. The SportsZone Chicago app can be found in the iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon stores. Thank you for tuning in to Sports 101. I'll see you next week, and you have a great evening.
I just arrived to get my COVID shot, and this is one shot I won't block.
Gratitude to a great ball club for a courageous effort.
No Celtics were harmed during my shot. Let's do this together. To learn more about vaccines, visit cdc.gov.
Good. I'm about to call him. Miss McNeil, her friend Maple.